Okay, here we go. It's time to begin.
Okay. So welcome everyone. I am actually taking the place for Catherine because she is traveling today, and I am honored. Let's see. Hold on. There I am.
There you are.
Yeah, I'm honored to be hosting Miss Mynoo Maryel today, and welcome. I have known Mynoo for, I don't even know how many years, for a long time, probably 14 or 15 years, Mynoo. I've known her when she was a movie producer, when she was a high-flying entrepreneur, before she had her spiritual transformation. And I have had the joy of witnessing her and just in her whole journey. And I've also been blessed to take her courses. I found my source, and that helped me really move into a higher place of alignment for myself. I did the Journey into Miracles, which was just extraordinary as well. And also I participated in Rishikesh recently in the Business Collective. So I've had plenty of opportunity to get Mynoo energy going with me. And I'm so fortunate and blessed to have had that opportunity. So what I really wanted to say about Mynoo is what she does is she integrates the personal life, your career, every aspect of your life, and she's just masterful at the integration of all of it, and really finding the miracles in each of us, and really really being able to shine that beautiful illumination, that light on each one of us, so that we can step into our magnificence and our miraculous lives that we all have. So yeah, I'm honored. Let me just say that to be here and to be hosting today. So today, what we have is something extraordinarily special. We're on the 8th commandment for the new world. The 8th commandment for the new world is unconditional acceptance, is the WD-40 that lubricates expansion. I'll say it one more time. The 8th commandment is unconditional acceptance, the WD-40 that lubricates expansion. Wow. And so as we're entering into the 5 days of illuminating, celebrating Diwali, it's time to shine the light on the 8th commandment for the new world. And the commandment is the one that unleashes your progress in the right direction. So it's really about getting practical and making it and getting it to happen now. It's all about moving forward and accepting. So Mynoo, that's what we're in for today, huh? It's a big one, a big one.
Thank you, Dea. Thank you.
My pleasure.
You're one of those few people that are here who knew me before and after, and in the transition, because that was a very important period as well, before, during the transition, and after. Yeah. I have spent, Dea's home in Los Angeles is my angel pad when I get to LA. So,
my pleasure.
Very, very special. And Dea has hosted me before as a corporate executive on her boat in Marina del Rey. She's one of those amazing Aquarian lawyer. And here you are hosting me online too. So thank you very much. There are several of you who haven't been on the series that we have been doing. So in case, we also have a WhatsApp group. So in case you are here for the first time and we don't have you on our WhatsApp group, in the chat you can just put in your WhatsApp number, and we will capture that. And then you'll be a part of our group. So here we are at this amazing, unusual time on our planet. And we are focusing our attention on the 10 commandments for our new world. So just to reiterate the commandments that we have already worked through, the recordings of these are available on my YouTube channel, which is called Expect and Accept Miracles. So the 10 commandments, the first one is unknown is the known. Uncertainty is certain. Change is constant. Take nothing for granted is the modus operandi. And then we move into some of these switching commandments. So it's about switching from survival to thriving. So now it is a thriving instinct that counts. And when you thrive, survival is a given. And then there is the next one, which is all about switching from sustainable to regenerative. It's time to leverage the energies that we have available to us, where every effort that you put in, give it some thought, prior thought, so it not only is sustainable, but actually can regenerate itself. And then you can continue putting your effort in something else. There are several of you here who knew me when I was seeped into the World Dignity Forum, and I think some of you even participated in the whole seeding ceremony of the World Dignity Forum. And dignity, as you know, is for me, is honoring of your own worthiness, and from that space, honoring that in others and in the planet itself. This commandment of switching from sustainable to regenerative is one of the most powerful honoring of our own worthiness. Every ounce of energy, attention, resource of any kind that we put into anything, let's make it count. And how amazing that, that is the energy that is available to us. All it calls for is a little bit more thought. And then we did the commandment last time, and now we are here on the 8th commandment. The 8th commandment today is all about unconditional acceptance of what is. Unconditional acceptance is a WD-40 that lubricates expansion. Now, here's the other thing to know about these commandments. They have the energy of the commandments. The previous commandments that Moses came down with on his tablet, continue to shape the world, or certainly inform and direct it for generations and generations and generations. These 10 commandments they're different in that they're about the foundation on which we as humans will stand and build and rebuild ourselves. And from that will emerge the rebuilding of the environment that we are all a part of. So these commandments are all about the foundation that we are standing on. So at a foundation level, today we are going to talk about unconditional acceptance. Unconditional acceptance as the lubricant for expansion. So as a soul being, the soul's only intention of occupying this human form is to expand its repertoire of experiences. That's it. It came here with nothing. No money, no reputation, no legacy. And it's going to go with, having enriched itself with our experiences. It came here, and when it came here and chose to occupy our human body, it's as if it lodged all of its previous experiences and the learnings from that in our gut. So our gut became the repositor of all of the wisdom from our various experiences of our soul journeys. So that occurred, and that's available and accessible to us. And now it is just going to expand that. That is its only intention. It is eternal, it's indestructible, it does not forget that. That's the reality from which the soul operates. So unconditional acceptance feels logical, that, yeah, I guess, and there's a but, for a human mind, it generates a whole host of questions. Because there are so many things that have occurred in our lives, in our world, and not all of them feel like we can just unconditionally accept. It feels like unconditional acceptance could be like condoning some things that are just plain wrong, as we may think. And yet, at a foundation level, the eighth commandment, eight is, by the way, also infinity. The eighth commandment is unconditional acceptance, is a lubricant for expansion. So first of all, it's useful to understand, what does it feel like when you are in the space of unconditional acceptance? Why is it important? Why can't we, accept part of it? And what's wrong with conditional acceptance? So much of when we say, okay, fine, well, I'll just put up with this. It's so conditional. It's not unconditional. And what happens is, why is unconditional acceptance important? When we go into this, okay, fine, I'll just put up with this. It's not worth the hassle, or not worth putting energy into, making my case. Whatever it is that we might come up with. What that does is, whilst you may think that you've accepted and you can move on, you don't actually move on fully. It's as if the moment you do that, you tie some weights around your ankles. And then you start, from that point on, you start moving forward with compromise. And what happens when you start moving forward with compromise is the universe, our dear friend, the universe, and there's so many of you who've done my work and who've been a part of these type of sessions with me, I always talk about the universe is here in service of us. And it has one modus operandi, which is to apply a multiplier effect to whatever it is that we are vibrating. So when you start moving forward with compromise, there's some yuckiness that's held in place in your field. And the universe picks up, compromise, yuckiness, okay, just applies the multiplier effect. The universe has so many people to serve, it just really doesn't go into any form of discernment. That's left up to us. This human form was created, with the idea that choice is our modus operandi. So unconditional acceptance is important because when you accept in any other way, you are immediately putting clamps around your ankles. That's the physical piece. There's like and sometimes you literally load your shoulders with some burden of what I call as unsaid communications. Unsaid communications. One unsaid communication results in 100 unfulfilled expectations. And when you believe you're holding something back from someone else, you're really, the person that you are having an unsaid communication with is you. And then what happens? You start experiencing, for each unsaid communication, for one unsaid communication, 100 unfulfilled expectations. I'm just giving you the lay of the land here. You're going to go into the practicalities of how you can turn this around. And I can totally see why this unconditional acceptance that, I've heard this for myself and I've been implementing it. And it's not always been easy, and I've, stuck it out and keep doing it, which is why we do the body of work of connecting you to your source. It just makes it so much easier to operate from your mastery and have this unconditional acceptance. I can see why that is so foundational to the new world. Because when uncertainty is certain, unknown is the known, change is constant, take nothing for granted. It's the modus operandi. And to that, you add conditional acceptance. To that, you add putting clamps around your ankles or carrying excess burden on your shoulders. Your mind runs rampant, and for your mind, a foundation of uncertainty is certain or unknown is the known feels so fluid. You're not even on solid ground from solely a mind perspective. So very rapidly, you go from wherever you're at into a train wreck situation. So as some of you have heard me say, if you are to go into acceptance, have it be an unconditional one. Now, how do you actually get there? Is what we are going to be talking about. And what becomes available to you when you do? So the first step to unconditional acceptance is to really capture the lay of the land. So that's the first step. Capture the lay of the land. What do I mean by the lay of the land? I'm talking about your lay of the land. If there is something that has come up that you feel you don't have control over changing it, and you're going to be called to accept it, because that doesn't seem like any other option that you might be faced with. So the first part is to get the lay of the land in terms of understanding what is it that you are actually going to accept. So this is like get the lay of the land. The first piece is, what are you actually going to accept here? Half the time we react to acceptance because we have given meaning to whatever it is that we are meant to accept. It could be the outcome of the elections. It could be, another massive, total lockdown, whatever it might be. There's meaning that gets added on, and then we start struggling to accept because of all the meaning related charge that has been generated. And we lose connection with what are we actually accepting. So the first piece is to really get the nuances of what are you actually going to be accepting. Now, here's the step that supports you to understand what are you actually accepting. So step number 2 would be to look at, like separating the fact and the story. So this is where you start understanding what has actually occurred that has given rise to a situation that I'm now supposed to accept. So the second step is all about getting to understand what actually occurred. It allows you to separate the meaning out from what has happened. And when you separate the meaning out, the reality is what's occurred has occurred. So there is no reason not to accept what's occurred because it's already occurred. You can debate whether you accept or you don't. You can only debate that to the meaning that you might have attributed to what's occurred. So the second step is all about separating the fact from the meaning that you might have given it. And then you go to the third step. The third step is focusing on full-blown understanding of the meaning that you have given that is causing you to have some anguish around accepting. The more clearly we understand, a problem, 90% of the solution is found just from us understanding the problem. The rest of the 10% is just taking some specific action. So in this step number 3, you are now focusing your attention. So the step number 2, you separated the facts from the meaning and you engage with the facts. Step number 3, you're actually really engaging with the meaning. Really getting the full understanding of all the meaning that you're giving to this particular situation. Once you've really understood the meaning that you've given to everything, then you go to step number 4. And step number 4 is to connect to the feeling that you are feeling. So here you're actually engaging with, what am I feeling about this? Now, a feeling is felt in a full spectrum way, especially when that feeling is associated with a meaning. If you hurt your hand because you fell and banged it somewhere, that's not a meaning related feeling. That's just you banged your hand and it hurt. But when you have meaning that you have given to some things and that's generating a set of feelings, that shows up physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in terms of your connection to your spirit, socially, your standing in society, as well as your environment. So now what I want you to do is to really engage with, in this step, engage with the feeling of it. How are you feeling? Where in your body are you feeling this, trepidation or a yuckiness? Very important to acknowledge the full spectrum feeling experience of this. Whatever it is that you don't acknowledge when it comes to acceptance becomes a conditional acceptance vibration and gets stuck. So go into, what am I feeling about this physically in my body? Choking, headache, jaw ache. Women often have this, women and men, when we have focused our attention on giving to others a lot, it has a direct impact on the breast region. So you might feel that heaviness and tightness there, gripping feeling in your solar plexus. Just really acknowledge, what am I feeling physically? Ask the question, how is it actually showing up for me physically? Have I got, is there pain? Is there, twitching? Is there, are there shivers? Whatever it is, acknowledge, acknowledge, acknowledge. Then you go into the mental side. And often feeling is associated with mental. Mentally how we are feeling. I'm saying feeling is such a full spectrum experience that you begin with physical, you don't address the physical, you're not able to go to the deepest layer of mentally how you're feeling, and as a result some of that anguish and anxiety remains. So you go into, how am I feeling mentally? What is it doing to my mental state? Am I able to be present? Am I able to return to my center? And then you go into emotional. What's the emotional experience of what's just occurred in terms of how I'm feeling? have at least a cursory glance of what all of this is doing to your connection to the spiritedness of you. That's spiritual to me. And then you move forward and you go into what is it, what am I feeling in the context of social dynamics that I'm a part of? Your family, your friends, your work, your professional presence, whatever it might be. And what is all of this doing to my environment inside and outside of me? What am I feeling about the environment outside exasperating the situation? And like literally, it becomes like one of those self-propagating circles, when you blame something outside of you, it starts showing up inside of you, and it multiplies with more things and more situations for you to blame. So this step is all about really engaging with, what are you feeling about this? Now you've got the lay of the land. Now you're ready to go into the next step. And this step, your focus is on literally distilling. You're now able to distill. So with all of this that is going on, what am I actually going to be accepting? Get clarity on the acceptance part. What the feeling analysis does is it shows you, it brings to the surface certain conditions that you might have put into acceptance. So once you understood, okay, this is what happened, this is what I'm feeling about it, this is what I'm supposed to be accepting, ask the question, okay, am I ready to have an unconditional acceptance of this situation? And if the answer is no, then you go into, under what conditions will I find this acceptable? And I'm asking you to do this, not because, we are talking about unconditional acceptance here. So I'm asking you to dedicate a whole step to understanding under what conditions will you find this acceptable. If you don't acknowledge all of that dialogue, it will be screaming at the top of its voice and will keep holding you back. And it is all about honoring your own worthiness. Dignity is one of the 3 things you're born with. Nobody takes it away. Nobody can give it to you. You ignore it or you forget about it. And when you reclaim that your own worthiness, and you do it in these practical ways, just thinking about it, okay, I say I'm worthy, you might have curveballs hit you, and then you're off track. And this acceptance piece has got a whole variety of curveballs that take you off track. So this step, you're really looking at, what am I accepting? And what do I feel about that? Can it be an unconditional acceptance? And if it can't be an unconditional acceptance, you go into, under what conditions will this be acceptable? And this is where I invite you to say the truth of what's so for you. And I want you to keep going until you're able to feel that you have released and relinquished all the should and should nots that you may be very attached to. So, if you think that you've written all the conditions, on if those conditions were fulfilled, I will find this acceptable. Just ask, is there anything else that remains? And keep going until you have everything, all the conditions under which you will find this particular situation acceptable. And this is where literally something magical happens, by the way, when I have done this exercise. It felt like I felt honored by me, the most important person in my life. You feel honored by you, the most important person in your life. So keep going, keep going, keep going. This remembrance of dignity returning is it's an exquisite feeling. Because it's one of the three things that you're born with. And suddenly it's like, you get received by you. We go out of our way to not show up in our full regalia. So now that you've got, okay, I am going to accept this, and you're very aware and present to all the conditions under which you will find this acceptable, you go to the next step. And this next step is a step about exercising your choice consciously. And this is where you consciously choose, knowing everything, the full lay of the land, as well as the deep desire to have all of these conditions under which you will find things acceptable. You're going to step into this step by making a conscious choice to unconditionally accept what is. Now, I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute. You can imagine, let's say there's something where it seems so sensible to have a set of conditions. And those conditions are not unreasonable either. But when you go forward and accept something with a whole host of conditions attached to them, your mind really becomes a busy bee. Busy bee making sure that those conditions are met. That little voice in your head, the one that's saying, what little voice is she talking about? That little voice becomes so loud. It becomes so loud. Anytime any of those conditions are like, you waver from it, that it stops you in your tracks. But if you don't acknowledge, under what circumstances you'll find something acceptable, if you don't acknowledge it, at a vibrational level, it exists. So whatever is going on in our heads, the feeling, the conditions, the meanings, everything exists as a vibration in our reality. So by going ahead and acknowledging it, your mind doesn't have to hold on to anything. It recognizes, okay, it's been acknowledged, it's there somewhere. So this last step that I'm talking about, where you make a conscious choice to unconditionally accept what is, your mind is with you. And it is the mind that, is the primary leader of this form of choosing, unconditional acceptance of what is. Now, you cannot exercise unconditional acceptance of what is if you don't know what is. And whilst we are operating from a meaning space, all that is stuff is defined by the meaning. The reality is what is what's in the moment. And in the moment, for me, a moment is a moment that is rich in miracles. And I'm going to come to that in a minute. The first, really want to get the importance of this step where you make a conscious choice to unconditionally accept what is. What happens in that instant, in that moment? You make that conscious choice to unconditionally accept what is, having really seen what's and all, everything that's going on. Instantly the shackles break down, disintegrate even. The burden lifts off. Your spine recalibrates, and you literally feel these feelings in your body. I mean, every time I have experienced this for myself, and I see it in my journeys and the work that I do with people, when they step into unconditional acceptance of what is, it's as if the back of their crown gets a little tug and they become taller. Like literally, you get your spine back, and vitality and your center of gravity returns, and you can move forward. That's what happens. Pretending to do unconditional acceptance of what is without having gone through the first 6 steps, unless you've already mastered the whole thing, it is not a full unconditional acceptance of what is. The burden does not shift. You will keep feeling a pain in your neck or your shoulders or underneath your shoulder blades. So when you begin to work with this foundation, and that's why unconditional acceptance is the WD-40 that lubricates expansion. We can expand, no matter what, we can. The soul is here to expand. Our physical bodies are the vessel for that expansion. So sure enough, we can expand, and it could take all the force, all the resource, all the resilience that we have, and we will still make it. And we are looking for the WD-40, the lubricant, that will just literally dissolve the rust, because that's what WD-40 does. It does more than lubrication. It literally transmutates the rust that is coming in the way of a hinge. And the lubrication occurs as well, but it really is the dissolving of that allows, the hinge to move perfectly. It gets, like the door gets unhinged and frictionless. So our expansion and expansiveness develops that frictionless quality. And now you're in the realm of regenerative expansion, where every step of expansion regenerates itself and can keep going. And you can then literally choose, you are unleashed, and you are free to choose another area that you wish to focus your attention on. I mean, the gift of this crown phenomenon, which has given us this time to be with ourselves, be within ourselves. Even if you didn't do it all day, every day, if you allocated even 5 minutes a day to this, like really being true to this segment of unconditional acceptance, mastering this commandment, so much of your life will transform. And the intention is to step into aliveness and have that aliveness be regenerated ongoingly. And that is what becomes available to us with this particular commandment. Unconditional acceptance of what is. You know, and many of you know this by now, that when I receive something as an intuitive guidance or a transmission, I just use the words exactly as they come through, because I know the nuances of each of these words, and the sequence in which they occur has been invaluable. And you know, I can see this thing. It's like spirits using the phrase WD-40. I mean, hello. And I can see why, because of what WD-40 was. You know, how does just a few drops of this thing, you know, gets the most rusty of hinges to just suddenly start working well? You know, oil didn't do it. There's something more to it. And it is because it brings about, it literally dissolves it, frictionless state occurs, and like literally even this metaphor of becoming unhinged as the precursor to becoming unleashed and experiencing your expansion and expansiveness is totally and completely relevant. And hence the commandment is expressed in this way. Unconditional acceptance is the WD-40 that lubricates expansion. And the other relevance to this commandment is the expansion part. The soul is here to expand its repertoire of experiences. There is only one purpose to life. There is no other purpose. There is only one purpose. Life by itself is a state where an organism is breathing. And that state where an organism is breathing can change with a click of a finger, where the organism stops breathing. What keeps this particular organism or keeps us alive is how we chose to live our life. So the purpose, the one purpose to life, why we are occupying this human body where breathing is a state that gives us life, the one purpose is to come alive. So acceptance is definitely an approach. Conditional acceptance takes some vitality and life force out. It introduces hooks and shackles and burdens that weigh us down. Unconditional acceptance, applied consciously. And it's unconditional acceptance not as a flippant comment, but actually applied consciously, where you get a sense of everything that is going on and you are doing it with an understanding of what you're accepting. That is the WD-40 that lubricates expansion. And expansion it is a given anyway. And how wonderful would it be for it to be frictionless, for it to be unhinged. And if you have that as a foundation on which you stand and build your life and show up in the world, anything and everything is possible. Because your world begins from you and ends with you. And every moment is an experience that you can generate. And you can have it be a miraculous one, where expecting and accepting miracles are the norm. A miracle being something beautiful occurs that makes your heart sing. You can tap into what's making your heart sing in every moment. The unconditional acceptance as the WD-40 that lubricates expansion is a very specific foundation for the new world that is your access to bringing your mind along. It is your access to remembering and resurrecting yourself as the dignitarian who is honoring your own worthiness. And from that space, you honor that in others. So much of what occurred previously began with humans dishonoring their own worthiness. It gave them a carte blanche permission to dishonor that in others and in other living beings. And look at how nature has provided us with so much evidence during this lockdown period across the world. As humans stepped into themselves, yes, it may be forced social isolation and social distancing. As humans stepped into themselves, automatically some aspect of them started, honoring their own worthiness. And this unconditional acceptance has started kicking in. People might have done it unconsciously, but everyone, literally every human on the planet has gone through that cycle where they've crossed that threshold of, no, this is not acceptable, to conditional acceptance, to unconditional acceptance. They may not have done it across the board, but pretty much every human on the world. And I interact with a whole variety of people from different parts of the world in different strata of society, in different conditions that they live in. From the super wealthy to having nothing at all. Everywhere there has been that switch in some area of their life. And that's got a cohort of humans to step into themselves. And what has it done? As humans started honoring their own worthiness, nature started honoring its own worthiness, and a reclaiming of nature is visible across the planet. Species that were extinct are showing up. Those double rainbows all over the world. The colors of the sky as they're meant to be. The witnessing of the Himalayas from Jalandhar, which was talked about in some ancient books. So many waters. You remember all the cleaning up of the river Ganges there? So much cleaning up has occurred naturally by itself. So many rivers have been resurrected that didn't exist. I'm very interested to know what the aquifer levels are. We've had humongous floods in the last several years here in India. Yes, there was some flooding because we had much more rain. Nothing as it has been in the last several years. Well, that's always an indicator that there is an aquifer filling that is taking place. More forests are emerging. Well, it's coming from that unconditional acceptance experience by pretty much every human on the planet in some area of their life, giving us a critical mass of that vibration, of honoring of our own worthiness, and that's creating that chain reaction. I'm so excited that, Spirit has chosen for this to be one of the 10 commandments, and it has chosen it to be the 8th commandment. That in itself has a very powerful energy of eternalness, infinity. It is also a number of wealth and prosperity, and lo and behold, right in the middle of Diwali in 2020, I'm doing the 8th commandment. I could have done it at any time. We're doing it here. So between now and next week that we get together, my invitation to you would be, take your time. This is all about taking bite-sized chunks, areas of your life where you feel you might have compromised, you feel you might have accepted conditionally, or areas in your life that you are finding unacceptable. Stop the big headline stuff in your life. Just go into the nuance of it. And it could be something about your physical looks. It could be something about, your dialogue about something that should have occurred when you were being brought up and didn't. Something that might be unrequired, whatever it might be. If only my fingers look different, whatever. The idea is to start toning these muscles, so that you can actually stand on these commandments, which are the foundation stones from where you're going to build your life. So use the time between now and the next week that we get together to just work it. And remember, nothing works. You work it or you don't work it. It doesn't necessarily work by itself. And the reality is, you can choose to work it. It's your choice. A suggestion that I have, and this is how I have worked with this for myself, I literally look at full spectrum well-being. So that's one lens. When I'm doing a deep dive body of work like this, where I can literally even visualize the yumminess that will come from an unconditional acceptance of what is and feeling unhinged and unleashed. I look at full spectrum. So I begin with physical. And I might spend days just focusing on different aspects of my physical being that I would love to apply this unconditional acceptance to. Then I take the mental part. Then I take, the emotional part, certain emotions. Then I take my connection to spirit, my practices to remain connected to the spiritedness of me. And this is my practice for myself, but also any judgments or evaluations that I might have about other practices outside of me. It could be religions, or it could be various ceremonies, or whatever it might be. And then I go into the social dynamics, how people relate, how I relate. And then I go into the environment within me, environment where I live, environment in my town, in my country, in the world, in the oceans, and the air quality. There are so many. You will be so surprised. I was like so amazed. And this is, I got into this whilst I'm into my spiritual awakenings. And I was just so amazed at how many pieces I had either accepted with compromise or, just not accepted and was still carrying on, putting it to one side. Really got to see how much murkiness, dirt and dust mites that we gather and accumulate when we do not step into this unconditional acceptance in this full way. It was like, wow, how am I even able to do anything at all when I have so much of this going on, which is not in the realm of that unconditional acceptance. So use this opportunity. You don't have to spend all day to do it. Even if you just allocated a segment of time every day between now and the next one, because the next two commandments we're now entering this whole implementation piece. The first few commandments were just so type commandments. Unknown is the known, uncertainty is certain, change is constant, Take nothing for granted is the modus operandi. They were like, just so, that's just so. And we've got practical ways in which you were directed to work with those. Then we went into the switching commandments. And now we are into implementation. This is the first of the last 3. So we've got 2 more, which will be implementation pieces. And this is the foundation of the implementation commandments that are going to follow. So having said all of that, I just want to say, this is between now and the end of the year. We are in this final stretch of 2020. 2020, I think pretty much everyone here had heard me talk about it before we got to 2020, and certainly very soon after I got to 2020, where I kept talking about the multiplier effect of this year is huge. And now it's been 100x multiplier added to the already rapid multiplier that was being applied. And the multiplier effect is always applied to whatever it is that you're vibrating. So use this time between now and the end of the year as a way of consciously expanding in a frictionless way, so that what gets multiplied is the expansion as opposed to the friction. Because 100x multiplier is being applied no matter what. And there is a lot going on. We've got some regional elections happening here. There's the election that have happened in the US. Corona, there's the next wave, which is even bigger in terms of numbers. All of that is going on. Just when industry had started to recover, there's massive shutdown again. Look, all the commandments are playing out. Take nothing for granted.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's playing out. So it's just that people, I've said this many, many times. This is not a vacation. This is not about, okay, fine, we'll cope with this, and then we'll go back to the normal. We already are in the new norm. And these are your commandments to work with it. So let's get that frictionless expansion going, and the 100x multiplier will be applied automatically.
Mm-hmm.
You can wait for the end of the day to feel, it's all great. I can have 10 things where there's some friction, but I've got at least 100 others where there is no friction. Well, it literally 100x multiplier applied to those 10 is not going to achieve that level of expansiveness that you have an opportunity to achieve. It literally is like you're going from one vantage point to another, You can catapult stratospherically and cause and make happen that which you are born to make happen, that which you signed up for. So wherever in your life there is any form of friction, and friction comes in a whole variety of guises, apply this unconditional acceptance steps. And having said that, this brings me to the end of this particular commandment. We always love, so sometimes we have an opportunity for questions, and today we don't have the opportunity for questions, but I'm sure this would have, as you start implementing it, it will trigger questions. So share the questions, share your experiences in the WhatsApp group, or whoever it is that you're connected with, either Catherine or Dea. Share them there. We are going to answer these questions. Next week, there'll probably be some time to answer questions, but it's a whole different perspective we are looking at next week. So we will allocate time to answer the questions. The key thing is, if there is a question, do not ask it. Because what happens is the moment you think of a question, you may not even have spoken it, you're anchoring the vibration of the question. So by asking the question, you're anchoring the vibration of being proactive to get a resolution. And I take it upon myself to ensure that the questions I receive, as guided, I answer them, because then we want the answer to be the one that is anchored vibrationally. So illumination, Festival of Light is being celebrated across the planet. The Indians have done a pretty good job of spreading ourselves everywhere. So
amazing.
So, enjoy that. And then we'll be coming up to Thanksgiving, and then the holidays begin with more and more light. It's time for us to spread that light.
Yeah. Thank you, Mynoo. That was amazing. Such a wonderful transmission. And I've been practicing this a lot lately, unconditional acceptance of what is. And I can promise you that it will deepen your relationship with yourself and with others and everything around you. It's so powerful. So, yeah, thank you, Mynoo. And we end every session with actually grounding a word, so one word that we're going to anchor in the field, because this is a holographic field. So if you would kindly like to leave a word in the chat box, I would love to read them and have it grounded and anchored into our energy field here today. So.
And yeah, Taya, it would be great for you to read them as they arrive.
Yeah, I will read them as they come in. I will read them. Okay, clarity, gratitude, blissful, cool, vibrating smoothly. Thank you for imparting the wisdom, Mynoo. Profound, can't wait to do this for myself. Thank you. Aware of new and beautiful light, Mynoo, illuminated and total acceptance. Calmness, pure, bright light. Regenerative, aliveness, gratitude, WD-40, possibilities, peace and excited, peaceful and excited. Thank you. To have frictionless life takes me to enlightenment. Thanks. Magnificence, magnificence yet again. WD-40 rocks. Intriguing and profound message. Expansive possibilities. Unlock the chains to full acceptance and happiness.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Thank you.
Have a fabulous celebration of Diwali. It is the time of flow of prosperity. And join us in Beyond Meditation if you haven't already done it. But join us. It happens every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I think there's some links that we can put in here if you don't have them as well to the Beyond Meditation. Or Mynoo's her Facebook page has all that information as well. Right, Mynoo?
Yes.
You could get that. Okay, great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.